You reach out to touch the light and find the darkness smiling back at you. It is the moment you thought you had reached the peak of awareness. Everything seems clearer than ever before. The veil of illusion has been lifted, and what you once believed in now appears raw and so real that it is almost unbearable. You expected to be filled with energy, to begin a new chapter with a burning heart. Instead, an unfamiliar stillness takes over. Not the gentle peace that soothes you, but a vast emptiness that seems to drain all life from within. I remember a friend of mine, much like you, who had spent years searching for answers. She read all the right books, listened to spiritual masters, and sat through meditation so long that time itself seemed to stop. Then one day, after a profound emotional shock, she told me everything had become clear. She saw the game of the ego, the futility of chasing validation from others. But just 2 months later, she was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to find a reason to get up. She told me that she used to cry over the fear of not achieving her dreams. And now, even if she did nothing, she simply didn't care. Does this image feel familiar to you? The moment of awakening that you thought would save you instead leads you into another realm entirely. Carl Jung once said that enlightenment is not about imagining beautiful images of light, but about bringing darkness into the light. It sounds inspiring, but in truth, it is also a warning. Because when you truly see the darkness within yourself, you do not only see the truth about the world, you also witness the collapse of the very structures that once supported your life. Work, ambitions, the plans that once excited you. Even your sense of time all begin to crumble. You realize you no longer want to play the same old game, and then a quiet question emerges in your mind. If the light takes away your motivation, is it truly awakening, or have you just stepped into an even darker journey? This is the paradox many encounter, but few are brave enough to admit. After awakening, you don't charge forward like a warrior who has found a new weapon. Instead, you stand still, sometimes even turn inward, and feel no urge to take another step. This doesn't mean you are weak or that you have failed. It simply means you are moving through a stage that Jung understood well. It is a sacred pause, a state in which the soul silences all noise so you can see what is truly happening inside. You haven't lost motivation because you are lazy. You have lost it because the old fuel has run dry, and your inner operating system is being rewired. In this moment, the things that once drove you no longer work. There is no more rushing. No more racing against the clock. Instead, there is an emptiness that makes you feel as though you've lost your way. But in truth, you haven't. You are simply stepping off the track to see where you truly want to go. Jung called this the first step of a deeper process where the old must die so the new can be born. And when you understand this, you will feel lighter. Losing motivation is not your fault. It is a sign that you have crossed a threshold that many people never dare to approach. So, what exactly has died within you since that moment? The death of the ego. There was a time when you lived behind a carefully constructed mask. In psychology, Carl Jung called this the persona, the social face you put on to face the world, the role you learned to play in order to fit in, be liked, and be accepted. You built it piece by piece, often without realizing you were doing it. Your tone of voice, the way you dressed, the way you spoke about your achievements, even the dreams you told yourself you were chasing, all were arranged to keep that mask intact. And for a long time, it worked. It gave you a place in the world, goals to pursue, praise to seek, and an identity to cling to. But awakening strips that mask away, sometimes slowly, sometimes like a sudden, heart-piercing jolt. When the persona falls, the life you built around it begins to dissolve. The goals that once kept you awake at night now feel hollow. The titles, the image, the milestones, they no longer carry the weight they once did. Strangely, nothing on the outside may have changed. The job is still there, the people are still there, the opportunities are still there, yet inside, everything is different. It's as if you had been acting in a play, knowing every line, and then suddenly the curtain drops. You step off the stage and realize you can't remember your lines anymore because the role no longer exists. This is why awakening can sometimes feel like a death. Not the death of the body, but the death of the person you once believed yourself to be. It's the moment when the version of you that once made sense can no longer survive. And here is the truth you need to hear right now: you are not lazy. You are simply no longer playing a role that has ended. Your body and mind are not designed to pour energy into something that has lost all authenticity. Your motivation hasn't disappeared out of weakness. It has simply stopped flowing toward illusions. But this is where the real challenge begins. If the role you spent your whole life perfecting is gone, then who are you without it? This question is not comfortable, not polite, and it comes with no quick answer. When the persona dies, you find yourself standing before your raw, unmasked self, with no script, no costume, and no applause. And that silence can feel overwhelming. Jung believed that the death of the persona is a necessary step toward individuation, the process of becoming whole, of living from the self rather than the mask. But this integration does not happen instantly. After the mask falls away, you must pass through a strange void where the old self is gone and the new self has not yet emerged. This is why so many mistake awakening for a setback. They think, if I feel this lost, I must be moving backward. But you are not moving backward. You are stepping into uncharted territory, and new ground never feels like home at first. So here is the awakening trigger for you if there is no longer a role to play. Do you have the courage to live as yourself, not as the version others applaud, not as the one who neatly fits the expectations of society, but as the one who stirs deep within you when no one is watching? That self may not yet have a name, but it exists, and it is waiting for you to return. When the old role is gone, you may feel as though you're drifting in open space, with no gravity to hold you. This sensation, overwhelming, uncertain, even frightening, is the doorway to something greater. Because once the persona dies, you no longer have to live to protect it. You are free to discover what has always been beneath it. And when that curtain closes for the last time, you will find yourself in a strange new land, where the old rules no longer apply, where the journey is no longer about perfecting a mask, but about meeting the true face of your own being. Stuck between two worlds, there is a strange stage that comes after awakening, where you are no longer the person you once were. Yet you have not become the person you are meant to be. It's as if you've stepped out of the familiar house you once called home, but haven't yet found a place to rest. You stand in an open space with no clear way back, and in front of you lies a misty, undefined land. Everything feels as if it is both opening and closing at the same time. You no longer wish to return to old habits, yet you haven't discovered the new path you are meant to walk. Carl Jung saw this as part of the process of individuation, the integration of the self, where you gradually become whole, bridging the conscious and the unconscious, uniting the darkness and the light within you. But to get there, You must remain in this in-between state. This is not procrastination. It is a deliberate pause, carefully placed by the soul so you can hear your own true voice. Imagine yourself as a nomad between two shores of time. On one side lies the familiar past, with everything you once knew, once believed, once clung to. On the other side is the unformed future, where the shapes of your new self exist only as seeds hidden in the dark. You stand on a narrow bridge, looking down into a vast emptiness, and each step you take demands absolute trust. The feeling can be deeply uncomfortable. You may see yourself drifting apart from those who continue living by the old rhythm. They are busy, they have goals, they know what they will do tomorrow. Meanwhile, you wake each morning facing the question, where am I going? This is the moment when many rush to escape, either by returning to old habits or by throwing themselves into a new version of life they're not truly ready for. But the soul is in no rush. It wants you to stay. It wants you to learn how to endure the uncertainty and stillness within it. The truth is, this sense of being lost is not a sign you are on the wrong path. It is an invitation to meet yourself again. When all the labels and outside definitions are stripped away, you are given the chance to look directly at your original essence, not the person others expect you to be, but the self you have always been, even before the world taught you who to become. So here is your awakening trigger. Do you dare to stay here, even when everyone else has moved on? Do you dare to stand alone on this bridge between two shores and trust that what awaits you ahead is worth the step? If you do, you will realize that this time holds a unique value. It is when the pieces inside you start searching for ways to fit together. Every experience, every wound, every joy, and even the shadows you once avoided, they begin to speak to one another. They are quietly restructuring you from within so that when you step onto the new shore, you carry a strength and clarity you have never had before. And then, after you have remained in that stillness long enough, something begins to happen. Something almost invisible to the eye, deep within. Your pendulum, the one that was once pulled hard toward ego and ambition, begins to move again. When the pendulum swings back, there comes a moment in the awakening journey when everything inside you begins to reverse direction. Carl Jung called this phenomenon enantiodromia, the movement from one extreme to its opposite. If you were once pulled hard toward the ego, always chasing goals, achievements, and validation, now that pendulum slows down and begins to drift toward the other side, the stillness of the soul, this shift rarely announces itself with noise. It doesn't arrive like a lightning strike, but more like a silent tide drawing the water away from the shore. One day, you realize you no longer feel the urge to jump into the races that once thrilled you. You stop reacting so quickly to opportunities, praise, or pressure. In their place is a deep stillness, as if the outside world has gone silent and you've slipped into another space, one without schedules, without competition, without the need to prove anything. Imagine you are a caterpillar entering the chrysalis. Before, you moved constantly eating, seeking shelter, doing what you could to survive. But at some point, instinct pushes you into the cocoon. Inside that darkness, your body dissolves into an undefined soup with no legs, no wings, no familiar form. From the outside, there's no visible progress, but inside, a profound restructuring is taking place. Without a new form, you are simply an unfinished dream. And here's the truth: this stage cannot be rushed. If you cut open the cocoon too soon, the wings will never be strong enough to fly. In the same way, If you try to leap over this darkness, you will miss the gold it holds for you, because it is in the darkness that the deepest parts of you finally have a chance to meet, to speak, and to unite. But this is also the point where the ego begins to panic. It's used to acting, deciding, controlling. Stillness makes it restless. It will try to push you into doing something just to escape the emptiness. It will remind you of the things you're missing, the people moving ahead, the opportunities slipping away. Yet the soul whispers, "Stay. We are building something deeper." So here is your awakening trigger. If you try to leap over this darkness, are you robbing yourself of your greatest chance at rebirth? Do you dare to remain inside the cocoon, even while the outside world rushes on? Jung understood that this reversal is essential for restoring balance. The ego took you far in one direction, and now the soul is bringing you back toward the center. You are no longer living to race against time, you are learning to listen to your own rhythm. And when you allow this pendulum to complete its swing, you will discover that it is in the darkest place so that you find your treasure. Facing the darkness. There is a truth most people would rather avoid. Within each of us exists a part we do not want to see. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden side of the psyche that holds our memories, emotions, desires, and traits we've denied. These parts don't disappear just because we ignore them. They remain, quietly shaping the way we feel, think, and act. And at some point, the soul will make sure you face them. When you lose motivation after awakening, it's not just exhaustion. It's the soul locking the door to everything outside so that you are forced to stay and face yourself. No more busyness, no more false goals to distract you. Only you, in the quiet, with the things you once ran from. Only when you sit in the darkness will your eyes adjust to the true light. At first, this darkness is intimidating. It feels like being lost in a cold room with no exit. You may revisit painful memories, old wounds you buried, or aspects of your personality you denied out of fear of judgment. But these are the missing pieces you need in order to become whole. Jung believed that integrating the shadow is not optional. It is essential if you want to truly mature in spirit. When you recognize the darkness as part of you, you stop seeing it as the enemy. You begin to realize it isn't holding you back, it's testing you. It is a strict teacher, giving you lessons the light could never teach. And then, something strange begins to happen. When you no longer resist the darkness, it starts to change shape. Anger transforms into protective energy. Fear becomes awareness. Wounds become compassion. Instead of trying to destroy the shadow, you learn to walk beside it, allowing both of you to move forward together. Realizing the darkness is an ally is a turning point. It not only frees you from inner conflict, but also gives you access to a new source of strength. When you no longer waste energy suppressing or denying parts of yourself, you create more space within to create, to love, and to live in truth. And when you can smile at the darkness instead of fearing it, something new begins to ignite. A small flame, not the flame of frantic striving, but the flame of presence starts to burn in your heart. Quiet yet steady, it lights the way into the next stage of your journey. The new flame. After you have spent enough time in the darkness and accepted the shadow as a part of yourself, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. The ego is no longer in control now. The self, the deepest and truest center of who you are, begins to lead. The self does not shout, does not push, does not set you on fire with pressure. It quietly lights a small lamp in your heart. and that light is enough to guide you through the night. The lamp in your heart leads you through the darkness. It is not like the old motivation, which was fueled by hustle and the fear of being left behind. This motivation does not push you forward just to prove yourself. It doesn't need an audience, a scoreboard, or applause. It exists simply because it is true to you. You begin to find yourself doing things not because you have to or should, but because they feel deeply right inside. It might be starting a personal project that no one knows about, writing a page in your journal that no one will read, or simply spending the afternoon learning something new out of pure curiosity. You feel lighter when you say no to things that no longer fit, even if they look appealing from the outside. You stop being pulled into races that were never yours to run, and a quiet question emerges. Are you willing to follow that light even when no one is watching? Because this light is not meant to shine outward, it is meant to illuminate the path for you. This new motivation is born from truth, not from the need to prove yourself. It is not about being better, faster, or more impressive than anyone else. It is about harmony between what you do and who you truly are. The interesting thing is, when you live from this motivation, you often achieve more than before, not because you are forcing yourself harder, but because every action comes from an inexhaustible source of energy. When the self is leading, you no longer need a detailed map. You learn to listen to small signals, a spark of excitement when thinking of an idea, a gentle pull when an opportunity appears, or a sense of peace when you know you are on the right path. You begin to trust your own rhythm instead of chasing the rhythm of the world. You also realize that you no longer have to hunt for clarity as if it were a scarce resource. Clarity arrives when you are ready to receive it. You stop fearing the uncertainty of not knowing what will come next, because you have found a compass within. And with each step you take toward that light, you become steadier. Every choice is made not to meet someone else's standard, but to reflect the truth within. This is a flame that does not waver in the wind, does not go out in the storm, because it depends on nothing outside of you. And as you continue to follow it, you begin to speak the language of the soul. Living symbolically. When the new flame within you burns steadily, another door opens. You begin to realize that life is no longer guided solely by logic and planning, but by subtle signals that arise from within and from the world around you. Carl Jung called this living symbolically a way of life in which intuition, inner imagery, and synchronicity become your compass. When you live symbolically, meaning finds you, you no longer have to hunt it down through endless goal lists or detailed plans. Instead, it arrives through small signs, moments of synchronicity that seem accidental yet strike you deeply, dreams that leave a lasting echo, or a random phrase you overhear that suddenly becomes a revelation. You start to notice that life is speaking to you in another language, the language of symbols. This way of living requires you to release your need for absolute control. You no longer cram every minute of your day with an endless to-do list. Instead, you allow space for events and inspirations to appear. But the deeper question is, if you set aside your list of things to do, would you still feel alive? Can you trust that your worth isn't measured by how much you accomplish in a day, but by whether you are living in truth with yourself at first? This shift can feel unsettling. You've been used to measuring success by productivity, but then you discover that when you live symbolically, achievements still come, only now they arrive more naturally and sustainably. You begin to choose work, projects, and relationships not just for their external rewards, but because they align with the inner calling. And when every action flows from that alignment, the results are not only effective but deeply fulfilling. Living symbolically also means learning to trust the flow of life. When you pass on an opportunity that doesn't feel right, another better suited often appears. When you follow an inner hunch, you find experiences you would have otherwise overlooked. You begin to see that intuition is not vague, it is the wisdom of your deepest self. This does not mean abandoning ambition or vision. On the contrary, you still have a direction, but it is no longer driven by ego or fear. Ambition now transforms into devotion to truth, to your own growth, and to contributing sincerely. This is the kind of energy that can be sustained over time, unshaken by meaningless races. When you live symbolically, you find yourself in a constant dialogue with the world. A song, an image, a chance meeting, any of these can become a message. You listen more, feel more, and respond naturally rather than reacting out of habit. And then, you understand that losing motivation was only the beginning. The very emptiness you once feared has become fertile ground for a new way of living to take root, a way of living in which each day is not merely a chain of tasks to complete, but a meaningful journey guided from deep within. Choosing the motivation of the soul. It's time to look back at the journey you've just walked. Losing motivation was never a mistake, nor was it a sign you had strayed from the path. It was simply the closing of an old cycle, making space for the real one to begin, a chapter where you live and act from the deepest center of who you are. What you thought was an ending was, in truth, an invitation to start anew. The flame of the soul does not go out when the winds of life blow. This is a kind of motivation that doesn't rely on recognition and doesn't falter when the world changes. It is a steady source of energy born from the truth within, something you cannot buy, borrow, or pretend to have. You find it only after you've had the courage to sit in the darkness. Embrace your shadow. Let the self lead and learn to live symbolically. Now is the moment to ask yourself, are you willing to live from your true center starting today? Not waiting until everything is clear, not holding out for someone's permission, but here, in this very moment, choosing to place your feet on the path that belongs to you. This path may be one few others walk, but every step you take is a declaration that you are living authentically, no longer replaying the old role, no longer being driven by borrowed standards. Living with the motivation of the soul doesn't mean life will always be easy. There will be days of strong winds, moments when you are tested. But unlike before, you will no longer be swept away by the fear of loss or the urge to prove yourself. You can pause when needed, adjust your direction when it feels right, and still never lose yourself. And the beauty of it all is that when you live from this motivation, achievement comes as a natural result, not as a forced objective. Be sure to watch my next video, where we'll explore how to avoid putting the old mask back on so that even when the outside world tries to pull you into your former self, you remain steady in the new one. If this journey has resonated with you, subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters. This is only one part of a much longer path we will walk together. And from this day forward, keep moving ahead with the flame in your heart that will never go out.